Welcome, everyone. I'm the Fanatical One, and episode 4 of Percy Jackson has just been released. I'm going to give you my thoughts and review, and also break down parts of the series. Now, hopefully, you guys are seeing this before the series finishes because I've been procrastinating this for a long time. Before we get any further into this, I will have to give you a massive spoiler warning because I will be talking about the full Percy Jackson series, some of the heroes of Olympus, and also a tiny bit of Chalice of the Gods. So, with that done, let's hop right into it. Now, the first thing I want to talk about is the casting of the show. Personally, I love Arian, Leia, and Walker. Going into the show, I had complete faith in Rick Riordan and his choices, and when I watched the first episode, I knew I put my faith into the right place because the three of them were Percy, Annabeth, and Grover. Now, one complaint I do have with the TV show is the hair and eye colors of Leia and Walker. It's not the biggest complaint, but it is quite sad that we won't get to see an Annabeth with blonde hair and grey eyes or a Percy with black hair and sea green eyes. But one thing I am interested to see what happens if we do reach all the way to Heroes of Olympus is the interaction between Nico and Percy at the end of the series, with Nico saying that Percy isn't his type at all, even though Walker looks just like Will Solis in many of the images for the show. As well as the main trio, the other castings are also really amazing. Dior plays Clarice really well. The one scene during the fight next to the lake was really epic, and the scream when her spear broke had so much emotion in it, and it was beautiful. Jason Mantzoukas as Dionysus is perfect. I love the interaction between Percy and him pretending to be his dad just so he could get some wine. It was a really hilarious change that I loved. And Charlie Bushnell, who plays Luke, does a really good job, and I'm interested to see how he does later in the series with the various interactions and how he will portray his character when Luke takes over his body. Before we talk about the various scenes in this season, I really want to talk about the pacing and the length of the show. So far, I feel like the fights have been really rushed. Like the fight on the bus, the fight with the Chimera, and the first fight scene with Mrs. Dodds in the museum. Now, I understand that there are several problems with limited CGI budget, but I still feel a bit disappointed with the fight scenes overall. I'm really hoping that most of the action is being saved for the Ares fight later in either episode 7 or 8. I'm not sure if it's going to be at the end of episode 7 or the start of episode 8. Another thing that I'm slightly disappointed in is the length of the episodes. The first 3 episodes were semi-decent in length, each being around 40 minutes long, but episode 4, in my opinion, was really short, being around 33 minutes long. The length of the last 4 episodes have also been leaked by the same person who correctly leaked the first 4 episode lengths, and they're quite short again, with episode 5 being about 37 minutes long, episode 6 being about 33, and episode 7 and 8 being about 40. I'm not sure if they're going to be able to fit everything, as they've already cut some things out, such as the pink poodle scene in episode 4 and the Hellhound in episode 2, but I think that one was mainly due to the budget cuts. I'm also expecting them to cut out Krusty's waterbed emporium scene, making the trio find the entrance to the underworld some other way. Okay, so now we get into the changes and details of the show. Starting with episode 1, the opening scenes of Yancey Academy, we can actually see Grover and Percy playing with the Mytho Magic cards. This is interesting as they don't actually come into the series until book 3, The Titan's Curse, with Nico D'Angelo. Grover later brings up that these cards were training for Percy so that he could get him ready for the various monsters that he may encounter later in his life. When Percy is getting expelled from Yancey Academy, on the left side, we can actually see Rick Riordan making his first of hopefully many cameos in the series. Later, when Sally and Percy are getting ready to leave for Montauk, Sally tells Gabe that they will stop by a sandwich shop called D'Angelo's when they get back. This is a nice reference to the Children of Hades, which is pretty cool since we won't actually see them for another 2 seasons. One change that I do want to talk about is how much they toned down Gabe in the series. In the books, Gabe is an abuser who treats both Sally and Percy really terribly. But in the show, he just seems kind of like a deadbeat, staying home and In the series, he also doesn't have a job, which is a change from the books, as in the books, he actually manages an appliance store. This change to a deadbeat instead of an abuser makes me question how they're going to get rid of him at the end of the books, because right now, I don't feel like he deserves to be turned to stone. I've seen some theories saying that there'll be some more flashbacks where Percy realizes that Gabe abused Sally that he didn't know about, but who knows? Later in Montauk, Sally tells Percy that his father is a god, and Percy's reaction is just really funny to me.
You fell in love with God? Like, like Jesus?
This is also really funny because Jesus and God do actually exist in the Percy Jackson universe, with Thor challenging Jesus to a fight, but he didn't actually end up showing up. Later in the car, when they're driving towards Camp Half-Blood, Grover actually mentions that he's 24, which may seem really random to non-book readers, but in the book, Grover states that satyrs age at half the speed of humans, meaning that he's the equivalent to a 12-year-old. Alright, let's talk about this Minotaur fight. It was amazing. It was so cool to see my imagination of the books coming to life, and I liked how they handled Percy already having Riptide in the show, as in the books he didn't have it, which made his defeat of the Minotaur more heroic. And it was just done word for word in the book, with Percy climbing on top of the Minotaur and ripping his horn off with his bare hands and stabbing it, which was just an amazing scene to watch, and it just filled me with joy after reading the books. Now, episode 2 was also amazing. We got to see Camp Half-Blood, the home of the Greek god's children. In the books, there are 12 cabins that are lined in a U shape, which is exactly what we got to see in the show, which is just incredible. The set designers did a great job with camp, and for me, it looks almost identical to how I imagined it when reading the books. This episode was also the first one that we got to see Annabeth, and like I said earlier, Leia portrays her very well, with her deliveries of the lines capturing the essence of Annabeth. I love the scene in the bathroom where Clarice and her siblings try and dunk Percy's head in the toilet, and the water just shoots out of the toilets and sprays them like in the books. And Annabeth just standing there stalking Percy, showing how she kind of already knew who Percy was and how he was different from the other people that she usually thinks are the one. This shows how she's kind of already one step ahead of everyone else, just like in the books. Another thing I like is seeing the dreams with Kronos taunting Percy, which hopefully we'll see more of in the series. I'm also hoping that we get to see the dream sequence where Luke is talking to Kronos, but Percy doesn't realize it. I'm imagining they put a filter on Charlie's voice in the scene so it doesn't give it away for the non-book readers. The capture the flag in this episode was also really amazing. I loved more highlights of Percy being Percy. I loved the cut from Luke saying that Percy was ready, just to him flossing. That actually made me crack up, and the rest of the scenes of him just chilling while the others are fighting was so funny. Something that I saw online was how what we saw was actually what Annabeth's POV was when she was invisible, and that's 100% my headcanon now, because after the fight, we did see that she was actually watching him while invisible. One change I didn't appreciate, however, was when he was fighting Clarice, he never once entered the water. And I won't lie when I say I was just screaming at my TV for Percy to get in the water. Also, Annabeth pushing Percy into the water like that was really funny, as something similar does happen in the new Chalice of the Gods, with Annabeth pushing Percy into the River Ellison. One thing I was not expecting was the size of the trident when Poseidon claimed Percy. Like, when reading the books, I always imagined it a tiny trident above his head, like in the graphic novels, but that was just not the case. Episode 3 has by far one of the biggest changes in the Percy Jackson TV series so far, that being Medusa's story. Rick wanted to retell the story using one of the Roman versions, where Medusa was actually a survivor of SA from Poseidon and was punished by Athena. Originally in the books, Rick used a Greek version where Poseidon and Medusa did have a relationship, but personally I like the change, and it doesn't do anything to affect the main story too heavily, and in my opinion it's executed very well, and it also shows the cruelty of the gods. This change is going to make Percy and many of the audience understand where Luke is coming from later in the series when he does betray Camp and the gods. And I can't wait to see the non-book readers' reaction for that later in the series as well. Episode 3 also has another cameo by Rick Riordan, this time in the form of a statue in Medusa's basement. This episode also gives more depths into our main characters, and we get more mentions of Thalia, and we also get more of our sassy Percy with the Pinecone's fate line, which really caught me off guard, but it was really funny. The bus scene was a bit mixed for me. I love how they showcased how the mist works in the show, with the mortal only seeing Mrs. Dodds in her human form instead of her fury form. We also have to talk about Grover pulling out the consensus song, which was really funny, and we also got to see Percy singing it at the end of the episode. This really shows Arian's musical talents, which started with his cover of Rolling in the Deep.
See how I leave with every piece of you. Don't underestimate the things that I will do.
No, I'm sorry for that. That was just too funny. One scene I am sad to see go is the bus exploding, but I'm assuming that's due to CGI costs being too high to explode a bus. But that also means that we might not see Percy being a fugitive, which is a bit disappointing. But who knows? We might still get to see that later in episode 5 after what happens in episode 4 with the arch explosion. But who knows? Speaking of episode 4, it's by far my favorite episode so far in the season. It starts to set up the small bits of Percabeth that I'm really excited to see later in this show and the season. And in the next episode with the Tunnel of Love scene, this episode, we get more scenes of the mist and how it works with the centaurs, which the mortals couldn't see, and also the chimera, which was a small chihuahua, which was exactly how it was in the books, which was just perfect seeing the little dog walk down the train. Suzanne Cryer also did an amazing job of portraying Echidna. She gave me an uncanny valley level of fear. Her overall demeanor was just quite scary, which I just loved. Her performance was also very book accurate. Episode 4 also has some great changes to the story that are minor to the overall story, but it's still quite major in this episode. In the show, they changed the St. Louis Arch to a temple of Athena that monsters can't enter, which is why Annabeth wants to go there instead of her wanting to go there because it's an amazing piece of architecture that she really wants to see. This change, however, also does a great job of showing how bad the gods are as parents, specifically Athena, with her allowing Echidna, the mother of monsters, to enter her temple to attack her favorite child just because of what a man did. This also starts to shatter Annabeth's perfect view of the gods, specifically her mother, since in episode 3 she defended her mother when Medusa badmouthed her, and I think it's perfect how last episode Medusa said that she is the same as Annabeth, and her not believing her, and now the same situation is happening to her. Another thing which melted my heart was the last scene during the Chimera fight, when Annabeth wanted to fight the Chimera by herself and to let her friends escape. Then Percy fakes her out, switching places with her, which is just so perfect for Percabeth lovers like myself. This also starts to show the fatal flaws of Percy and Annabeth. Annabeth's hubris making her think that she can fight the Chimera all by herself, and Percy's fatal flaw of loyalty sacrificing himself so the other two can escape. It's just so beautiful. Also, I can't help but think of Grover in this situation because the same exact situation happened 5 years ago with a forbidden child holding off monsters so the others can survive. The way the water caught Percy when he fell was really epic. It was quite the big change from the books where Percy had to make a leap of faith into the water, but I guess it's more realistic since the river isn't as close as Rick thought it was when he was writing the book, because there is quite a long distance between the arch and the river. I love the different speculation from the fans about how they're going to pull this off, with people saying that it was going to be in a different universe where the arch passes under the river. I also saw one where someone was saying that Rick was going to make a cameo saying, "Oh, I thought the arch was closer to the river," but we didn't get to see that. But this episode was still amazing. Before we do finish off the video, I want to give a ranking of the 4 episodes we currently have, and hopefully I'll have the entire season ranked in the next month or so. So in 4th place, we have episode 1. Now, I know, ranking the first episode and last doesn't seem that great, but I would still give this episode a 7 out of 10. It was a really good introduction to the TV series world, but I still feel like they had some changes that made me drop the rankings, such as the shorter Mrs. Dodds fight in the museum. In 3rd place, we have episode 2. This episode did an amazing job of introducing us to Camp Half-Blood and the various important characters like Annabeth, Luke, and Clarice. We also got to see the capture the flag in screen form, which was just really nice. I would give this episode about a 7.5 out of 10. Coming in second, we have episode 3. This was just a really great episode. We saw the trio embark on their first of many quests, and we also had great scenes, especially with the change of Medusa's story. Like I said earlier, the changes in this episode were executed very, very well, and the acting throughout was just phenomenal. Which, of course, means that in first place for the first half of the season is episode 4. As you can see by my rankings, I believe that the series is getting better and better as it continues, and this episode does a great job of setting up Percabeth and also the fatal flaws of both Percy and Annabeth. The chapters that this episode adapts were one of my favorites in the books, and I'm happy I got to see them on the screen. For my rating of this episode, I would give it a 9 out of 10, as I do believe there will be better episodes to come, and I can't wait to see them. That's everything for my thoughts and review of the first half of the Percy Jackson TV show. I will hopefully see everyone at the end of the first season with my final thoughts and theories. If you have any thoughts, theories, or queries, leave them in the comments section. But other than that, thank you for watching this video and enjoy the rest of your day.